Hello and welcome back to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. I am Greg Smith, recruiting extraordinaire, though it feels weird to say that about myself, of Hail Varsity, Greg Smith. I am joined by staff writer of Hail Varsity, Steve Marik. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. A little cold. I've
Yep.
had, this is very random, but I had a battle over this whole weekend with the wife over whether or not we needed to turn the heat up more. I was just freezing all weekend, and so I wanted it to be like 76 in here. And every time I went by the thermostat,
What?
it was turned down. Oh yeah, yeah. This is
Is that a
very,
joke?
no,
76?
no, that's not a joke. This is super off topic because we're here to talk about recruiting. But I go through these cycles where I get really, really cold in the house, and so I need to crank the heat up. But she was on the opposite wavelength where she was super hot, and it just wasn't working. And so it was just a battle that I very much lost because I kept going by the thermostat, and it was on 70. So yeah.
Well, Greg, my man, 76 is insane. What are
That
you
warm.
doing?
I got it. Listen, sometimes you got to get a little jolt to the system and then kind of see how it goes.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
I'm with your wife. I'm a 70, call it good. Even 69, 68. I'm all set.
oh boy. So now the comments are going to be lighting me up about keeping the
Yeah,
house
well,
like a
they
sauna.
should, to
Like
be
I think
honest
that's
with you.
okay. That's definitely coming. I walked right into that. I volunteered that information on my own. Um,
76.
Yeah, 76. But anyway, we are here to talk about recruiting.
Yep.
We are here for the recruiting question video of the week. And this question actually came from a bunch of people, and it's been rolling in kind of all off season. And I've been kind of waiting to talk about it just because we didn't have as much information. And now I think we've got enough to kind of dive into it. And the question is essentially, what does all of the quarterback chasing in the transfer portal this offseason, plus the hire of Mark Whipple, do for 2023 quarterback recruiting for Nebraska? Now, I think that it's really interesting because it, of course, comes off of the heels of the news of Casey Thompson, the Texas quarterback transfer, announcing that he was going to come to Nebraska over the weekend, which is one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, the Mark Whipple hiring a couple of months ago is another piece of this puzzle, which always shifts things when you have a new offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. But the place I kind of want to start is that it's actually a little bit of a blank slate for Nebraska's 2023 recruiting, just because we're in a situation where Nebraska has only actually offered two scholarship quarterbacks for the 2023 cycle. One was Rhys Mooney, who already committed to Vanderbilt, which was kind of a surprise for Nebraska fans, given that he had been so heavily involved with Nebraska and had made a couple of visits out here, one on his own dime, and well, both on his own dime, but one for the spring game, one for a game this fall. And then J.J. Cole, the talented quarterback out of Iowa, is the other quarterback that was offered. He's more of your classic pocket passing style quarterback, who I just think is destined to play in the Big Ten. I honestly think he's going to be in the Big Ten somewhere. It's just a matter of where. But he's a talented kid, but kind of an opposite type of quarterback to what they've been recruiting. And so it's a really blank slate. Like, we don't know which way they're going to go. And so I guess I want to start with you here, Steve, is that how do you think the Mark Whipple hire impacts what Nebraska is trying to do with quarterback for 23?
Yeah, so whenever I think about this, like how it affects Nebraska's quarterback room with Whipple, Whip in the fold here, I think about arm strength and just taking shots downfield because of what I've seen, just pulling up YouTube and watching as many Pitt games as I can. You know, last season especially, he took shots down the field, but of course he had the supporting cast and the players to do so with a Heisman caliber quarterback. Kenny Pickett's not going to be in Lincoln, obviously. Casey Thompson, and from what I've little research I've done on him, he has a big arm and he can throw it down the field. And he did play for a great offensive mind in Steve Sarkisian last year at Texas. And Sarkisian really liked to, stretch defenses down the field, stretch the field and test kind of the defensive backs deep coverage. And I think that's kind of what is in Mark Whipple's blood, I guess, what he really wants to do. And so whenever I think about, Nebraska's quarterback situation moving forward, as long as Whip is here, I think it's going to be trying to find a guy who has that arm strength that can stretch defenses down the field. And, right now, Casey Thompson has that, I think. And he has the receivers room to do that. Just athletic, big, tall, rangy, athletic guys like Xavier Betts, Omar Manning to just, go down. And even now with Trey Palmer from LSU, the former 5-star, he's more of a smaller slot guy, but he has the receivers. Whipple has the receivers at Nebraska to do what he tried to do at Pitt. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that, the arm strength factor goes into the quarterback recruiting from here on out with Whip in the fold.
Yeah, and I think it's really a good point to mention the arm strength thing kind of first and foremost, because I do think that that's a big feature of everything that Whipple has wanted to do throughout his time as an offensive coordinator. But that doesn't necessarily jive with what Nebraska has recruited here at quarterback under Scott Frost. It's been guys that have been more accurate and more quick decision makers, but more athletic quarterbacks versus arm strength being the first thing that you think of outside of Harburg, who was kind of the anomaly anyway to mostly every quarterback that they had recruited under Scott Frost. Because even Adrian Martinez, for as many numbers as he put up, like his arm strength was good enough. But you would not necessarily say that he had a cannon, right? Like, I don't think that that's how you would describe it. It was good enough, right? And so that to me is really interesting, is that we don't quite know yet, because we haven't seen any real new like 2023 scholarship offers go out at quarterback just yet. And so we don't know yet how they're kind of leaning there, but there have been a couple of names, and as a teaser, we'll talk about a little bit later on hailvarsity.com this week, that I have heard as far as quarterbacks that they're maybe looking at, and they are definitely closer to what a Casey Thompson is probably going to bring to the table versus, say, maybe a Logan Smothers or Luke McCaffrey before that, and some of these other guys. Like, I find that really interesting. But the other thing that you and I, Steve, were talking about, before we started recording this video, and I would give you credit for this point and let you explain it, is that there might be something cooking as far as how Nebraska uses the transfer portal versus looking at high school quarterbacks as well.
Yeah. So the transfer portal has obviously changed the game in college football, and everybody's kind of just like learning how to adapt. Because if you don't adapt, you're going to die, right? So you need to understand how the future is going to look. And at least to me, the way I'm just from viewing everything outside of the bubble, it might not be that big of an importance to, put all of your ducks in the high school quarterback basket recruiting wise for your future classes, because every single recruiting cycle, there's going to be these college quarterbacks who may have experience, may not have experience, but they have been in a college football program before, who are hitting the transfer portal, just like we've seen with this recruiting cycle with so many college football quarterbacks, like I said, who have played and who haven't played. Like, just look at Casey Thompson. He has played, and he was kind of a high profile name coming out. There's going to be more Casey Thompsons every single year with recruiting cycles. And there's going to be a lot of Chubba Purdy's too, who might not have the experience that may excite a fan base, but still kind of, you take him and develop him, and boom, you have a starter in two to 3 years, something like that. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how Nebraska and other programs kind of lean on the transfer portal specifically for the quarterback spot, because it's such an incredibly important position that you want, kind of a plug and play guy that, might sound bad to say out loud, but like, if you can curve that development time, like, oh, I can just take this guy and he's ready to play right away, and I don't have to like spend 3 years developing him. That's, I don't know, like for a win now situation like Scott Frost is in, that seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it's just really interesting because it changes so many things. Like Nebraska, traditionally under Frost, Nebraska likes to have 4 or 5 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. I don't know how feasible that's going to be going forward. If you continue, because you have to think about it, if teams are losing these quarterbacks for Nebraska to then gain and be able to plug somebody in theory, Nebraska's going to lose guys eventually too. We've already seen that. That's not going to really slow down. So I wonder if that changes at all, if it changes to where now maybe you try to have 3 scholarship quarterbacks and maybe like a quality walk-on that kind of goes along with that, and you're developing those guys in case you need them in that case. But then also knowing that in any given offseason, unless you have kind of a returning starter situation and where that guy's just continuing to ascend, in any given offseason, otherwise, you could be looking at bringing somebody in from the portal. And I think that your point about a guy like Chuba Purdy, like kind of always being available, like those guys, I think that's the big game changer. It's one thing to be able to say, okay, you're going to get a guy that's a one and done situation, or even a two and done, because like in the Casey Thompson's example, he's got 2 years of eligibility. I would think that if he has a huge year, that he would not be around for a second year, but you kind of cross that bridge when you get to it. You take the huge year, right? Because that means probably team success too. That'd be fine as well. But I think that when there are guys that you would like to have in your program at quarterback in the transfer portal that are 3 and 4 years of eligibility left, like it really changes everything for high school recruiting, because it almost doesn't make as much sense to take that high school kid. Whereas if you got a kid like Purdy who's already been in a college strength and conditioning program, and you can get him in, and he's already kind of started that accelerated development versus starting at the high school development stage, I could see coaches really leaning towards that. The one caveat I will put in that, though, is eventually things will smooth out with kind of the extra COVID year and everybody having an extra year of eligibility. And so that's partially why Purdy has 4 years instead of 3. And so that might help curb things a little bit, and honestly it should for high school kids, because that 1 year will be a big difference. But that to me is what makes this a game changer. If you got guys with multiple years that can come in, all bets are kind of off at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the way that things have been shaking out with the transfer portal, it's kind of killing the backup quarterback situation everywhere across the nation too, which gives more headaches to these head coaches trying to manage their roster. But that's just the way things are, and they're going to have to grow and adapt and learn how to do things. And the backup quarterback at every school right now is thinking, well, could I play at this place? Let me put my name in the transfer portal and see. Right. So that's happening everywhere. It's gonna, it might happen at Nebraska. I guess we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as always, you want more information on this topic, I'll be diving into it in the recruiting notebook tonight. The one that goes on Monday is always related to this video of the week. Sunday through Thursday is when that recruiting notebook goes live at 6 p.m. every one of those days. So make sure it's appointment reading. Make sure you go and check that out. Make sure that you're continuing to check out hailvarsity.com and subscribe to this YouTube channel as we continue to bring you guys this video content. Steve and I actually did a video reaction to the Casey Thompson news, and that's up here on the channel right now. So make sure you go ahead and like that as well. Leave your comments. We definitely appreciate you all leaving comments and having discussions about all of these topics. I eagerly await you guys roasting me for the 76-degree thermostat situation. We will catch you guys next week.